Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
So you made it, huh?
Yeah. I
Good,
tell
good.
you, this technology is something.
Oh yeah, I mean I get lost many times myself.
Yes, sir. I think all the
Alhamdulillah.
grandchildren.
Okay. So are you on that trip that you had talked about or
Yeah, I'm up here in Maryland with the 40 of us. I'm at my daughter's house right now. Of course, they all work and go to school during the day. So
oh
I'm
okay.
just here with all my studies and you
Okay.
all.
All right. So I'm gonna hang out for a minute to give people a chance to show up.
Oh, sure, no problem.
Yeah, I didn't make an announcement in the class this morning, but it's like
Oh,
if
okay.
you well, hey,
I
if
know, right?
you're interested and I've
Yeah,
already
you'll be there.
the
Yeah.
word is out there then. But of course some
Mhm.
people work like
Yeah, true that. 2 o'clock, yeah, work.
yeah, so
Our time here anyway.
not being harsh.
No, because I sent it out to a couple of sisters that I know that are home,
Uh,
don't work.
hmm
So I had it all mixed up this morning, thought it was at 11, and I sent it back to them. I said, no, it's not till 2.
Yeah, so I mean that's something I need to clarify too though. That 11 o'clock Pacific time,
Yes.
then it's
Yeah,
something else, some
inshallah.
mountain and East Coast. So what we're gonna
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Here they come.
I'm at work, but I'm listening.
All right, alhamdulillah, good. Uh, now I know who Samsung SM is. It's been a mystery to me, but now I got you, alhamdulillah. So we're gonna 2 minutes. We're gonna go ahead and start today's lesson, inshallah. How's the weather in Maryland, Haja?
Oh, it's good today, like 50 some degrees compared to 12 degrees some mornings previously.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, East Coast ain't no joke when it comes to that cold, boy.
Mhm.
Uh,
How's it out there?
just beautiful. I mean, I don't want to. I ain't even gonna flex. It's like,
Right, don't spoil it. Don't be a spoiler.
no, it's California.
Yeah.
We
Right.
had a little fog this morning, but it's we thank Allah.
Heck of or
They,
whatever.
they,
Yeah.
they take it they take it back in taxes. So whatever you get that speciality,
Mhm.
they definitely charge you for it one way or the other,
Sure
mashallah.
do.
But it's all beautiful wherever we are, right?
Oh yeah. Whatever it is.
Yeah,
The
alhamdulillah.
laws in control of it all.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
All right, before we take off, let everybody know when I'm presenting, the only thing I see is what you see in terms of a PowerPoint slide. So I'm not looking at the chat, but you can always put questions and comments in there
Mhm.
that you feel warranted, useful, or what have you. And that of course respects what's being said and
Right.
being done here. But beyond that, I just go through and I present the material that I brought to present, and I actually do that for the first hour. After that, the remaining time is open for discussion of anything connected with the Fajr Halaqa or with what we are talking about in this particular session. So I'm going to begin now.
Okay. Inshallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. So this is the extension of the Fajr Halaqa, and it is the object, of course, is to go further into a technical understanding of Bismillah. The intention is to go further into a technical understanding of what is meant by the language of Imam W.D. Muhammad. So what we're working through is a document that I published in 2009, and I'm using this platform as a way to well, reintroduce it to some who didn't catch it 16 years ago, but to also take advantage of this opportunity to update wherever it may need to be updated, and by way of adding information that has come to us, anecdotes, evidence, support, etc., that has come since that time, doing it live just based on the document. So fundamentally, we're just reading through the document and adding appropriately, inshallah, new information or contemporary understandings that can benefit us right here and now. So I do have to ask Jenna, I ain't nothing but love, but I need you to mute your mic so everybody.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Everybody, we can do that. That's the teacher in me is like, I don't know, all of us have that teacher that we remember. Mr. So-and-so and Miss So-and-so, they just had their way. Well, in this space, I'm that teacher. Inshallah, Allahu Alam. I think everybody understands that. So this is where we left off last segment. And it's the comment, follow the logic to its conclusion. And one of the reasons, 2009, the Imam, obviously this is something that he had said. I believe it was actually during a Ramadan session. And it quoted, let's say that this part of this statement went viral among us using contemporary language. Yeah, you got to follow the logic to its conclusion, brother. Yes, okay. So then it became a meme. It became a cliche, and so it's like, no, you have to understand it right. You have to use it right. You have to apply it right. It's nothing to be played with or to be treated frivolously. Okay, anything that the Imam gives us in that way, but that stands out or stood out at that time as an example of the need for clarity on the things that Imam Muhammad has given us. So, reading Imam Muhammad's statement that following the logic to its conclusion was given in the context of courage more so than competence. He said, some of you are afraid to follow the logic to its conclusion. Why do you need courage to follow the logic to its conclusion? This is me talking now. The Imam makes a statement, some of you are afraid to follow the logic to its conclusion. And I'm asking, following that, why do you need courage to follow the logic to its conclusion? Because the logic will sometimes lead to conclusions that are unexpected, even unpopular. But those conclusions were inherent to or implicit in the logic itself. So despite that, the believer has to continue to follow the logic wherever it leads. And I point out as an example, Abraham, when he had to leave Hagar in the barren valley, and also in his story, in his life, where he had to have the willingness to sacrifice his son. So part of the early advice to me, again, that is continuing, part of the early advice given to me as an imam by Imam Muhammad rahimahullah was this. He said, when I speak to the public, I can only give hints and suggestions in certain matters. It is the responsibility of imams to bring information to support it so that it can become edifying to the people. In the intervening 3 decades, I operated on an understanding of that statement that dictated that I seek out edifying information from any field of knowledge that endorsed the views and insights that the Imam shared publicly and privately on any subject. Okay. So those became for me marching orders. And let me say this so people can understand it. I want you to understand it in the context of how we exist now and how Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah, how he um, how he executed his mission, right? One of the things I've used the analogy of Johnny Appleseed. Some of you know that story of Johnny Appleseed, where, you know, it's part of folklore, American folklore, that where all these apple trees come from, you know, from Johnny Appleseed, just going around, just dropping seeds everywhere, and so then wherever he left a seed, then fruit tree, apple tree, etc., propped up. Well, that is an analogy for Imam Muhammad in his mission as well, in that he would go to a city where, you name it, whatever city he went to, Imam Muhammad was always on the lookout for whatever kind of talent, excellence, resource is in that environment, where it was in the people, in the city, in wherever, and keen to discern the potential, Imam Muhammad, the wherewithal to be able to look into a person real quick and quick, already know you're a this and you're a that and you're a this and you're a that. I'm just trying to abbreviate. This is the case. And the Imam would plant a seed in those whom he discovered a preponderant talent for, whatever, it just doesn't matter. It could be music, it could be, I take my brother Williams, Kareem's definition, sound art. I don't have any disagreement with that. It could be fashion, it could be education. You know what I'm saying? It can be anything. Imam Muhammad, when he saw whatever that was in you, he would give you something, hit you with something, touch you with something, or say something to you in a way. I'm talking about anybody. Say something to you in a way where you say, boom, that's my mission. That's what I do. And we have people right now, and they have demonstrated that Imam Muhammad picked them right for that. You should, if you're on this line, you're somebody who knows. Yeah, you look around the country, and you can look up in the east, you can look in the south, you can look in the Midwest, you can look in the West, etc. You say, yeah, that brother, yeah, that sister, and they are still on the mission that the Imam put them on by virtue of his insight into their potential and talent and how he tapped it and how he guided it. And we see models, examples for that. So counting myself among those who are blessed with in that regard, that is to have been motivated, stimulated, directed in a manner of speaking to, and explicitly, both implicitly and explicitly, that pursuit of knowledge for that purpose, upon that directive, mashallah, this is no boast, this is how I have operated from the time I was there before. When he tapped in with this statement, the rest is history. So in terms of seeking that knowledge, as I make a statement here, in the intervening 3 decades, I operated, so, intervening 3 decades, right? So he was with us 33 years, right? So then this was late 70s, early in his mission. So that's how I have related to the Imam and his knowledge from that time. So he said, so therefore, what have I been doing then? I'll say, seeking out edifying information from any field of knowledge. Why? Because that's what he said. You have to bring information to support it. So I have to look wherever I have to look in order to find, well, what supports Imam Muhammad's position here, the information there. You start from the position that the Imam has already brought the abstract, the extraction, the synthesis of his studies to us. And so when he says it to us in the public, without the details behind it, it doesn't mean he doesn't have the detail. He just don't have the time, and it's not the situation for him to give us the details that brought him to the conclusion that he presents to us. He's bringing us his conclusions for us in that place and time. And some people think that because he doesn't give it in detail, or because they can't make the connection between that statement and whatever statement preceded his conclusion, is that, well, you don't know what he's talking about. I never heard of that. Well, Sheikh so-and-so never said that. You know the stories. But the Imam, for his supporters, is expecting them to, okay, I can't give all the details. Okay, but you follow me, right? Or you understand my point. You understand my conclusion. You understand my purpose. You understand my aim. You understand what I'm trying to say. My sheep know my voice. Then go get the information and then tell the people, this is what he's saying. This is what he's doing. And mashallah, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen. There are those who the Imam trusted to follow up in that way. Don't bring something that don't support what he said, or bring something that you use what he said to make it say something that he didn't say, right? Because you got that going on too. Imam Muhammad said blue, 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 and this proves that blah, blah. It's okay. Slow up. So let's carry on. In June 2008, Imam Muhammad gave an explicit definition of what it means to edify, okay? He said this: to edify means to have a picture in mind, and you're building up a text or building up a speech or a presentation, and you're building it up with a base, and you're putting lined, meaning bits of information, or material upon material. But you first got to have a base. And that base has to be real, meaning start from facts, right? So the base has to be real. It has to be rational. That is, don't just pull something out of your imagination or your whatever, speculation. It has to be rational. It has to have logic. So then you can put other material on top. Because if you got something, you got a weak premise, for example. If you're starting from a weak premise, and then you try to put something real, actual, heavy, weighty on that premise will not be able to uphold what you're trying to put on it. You have to start from a base that is rational, that is real, that is actual. Now that's a firm foundation for that. Okay. So you put other material on top of it. And as long as the material edifies, that means as long as it continues building the structure, that is, you have a premise. Okay, now you're putting something else on top of that premise. Does your premise support the next claim that you're making? You're putting a premise on, you put a data point, you put an information on top of a premise that you're starting from. Does what you what you began with, does it support? Does it support what you're trying to put on it now? So the Imam says, as long as that material edifies, that means continues the building of the structure, it contributes to the growth of our building of that structure. That is, your presentation is the structure, right? So the new material respects the reasoning or respects the logic that was established in the base. I have to tell you this because this is what we need to understand. Okay, so it's a point of study that you have to, if you're serious about knowing it, if you're serious about understanding it, if you're serious about utilizing it, if you're serious about applying it, then you have to be serious about the study of logic, right? All right. There are words in logic as a science. There are words like sound and valid. So you can already hear in using the term sound, It's like, but it's not, that's not talking about sound in your ear directly. It's talking about solidity. Solidity. Is it sound? Oh, that bridge don't look like it's sound, right? If it's not sound, then it can't hold things up. It's like if you want to take a step, you don't want to step in quicksand. You don't want to step in mud. You don't want to step in water, whatever. You want to step on a stepping stone, right? You want to step on something that's a solid foundation. So when you talk about sound reasoning, sound logic, it's talking about solid premises, solid foundation for what you're starting. You've heard the language, garbage in, garbage out, right? So if the system that you're using is an unsound system, you can reason inside of that unsound system, but garbage in, garbage out. So the idea is understanding that take the Imam statement again. So the new material respects the reasoning. Okay, brother and sister. Definition. What is reasoning? Reasoning is inference making. I hope you're taking notes. Reasoning is inference making. Okay. What do you mean inference making? Inference making means if this is true, then that is true, right? That's an inference that you're making. Okay, since this, then therefore that. The therefore that is inferred. You inferred this B because of that A. So you start with this premise, and then by what you understand about the premise, you infer that this must be the case. That is reasoning. Getting from A to B is reasoning, which is also inference making. I'm inferring this because of that. Okay? Here's the thing. Simple physical illustration. MashaAllah. All right, we were talking about, before we began, we were talking about the East Coast weather, right? And so I have Minneapolis in my mind right now. Shout out Minneapolis, Imam Makram, and Sister Erlene. Mine is several places, but so I remember being in Milwaukee, not Milwaukee, well that too, but in Minnesota. The snow was pristine. It was like, it's just the pure, you hear the language, pure as the driven snow, right? It's just like so untouched, so smooth, etc., etc. But now imagine that you have this pure white, just fallen snow, etc. Then you go out there and you see footprints. You see impressions that have been made that for all intents and purposes, there's a human being that made these footprints, right? So you see the footprints in the snow and you infer or reason or come to the conclusion that a human being made these footprints. That's an inference. You're making that inference. You're reasoning that because of the nature of what you're looking at, that the snow, the shape and the pattern of the impressions, these footprints were made by a human being. So the assumption is that a human being walked in this space. So that's an inference. You've made that inference. That is what reasoning is. So you start with something, and then you start reasoning from that beginning. You start reasoning from that premise. You start reasoning from that foundation. So in the case here, I'm not really trying to teach the whole thing. In the case here, that is sound reasoning because you have all the factors, you have all the justifications for believing that a human being walked here because of what you're looking at. All you have is what you're looking at. That's the foundation that you started with. That's the premise that you start reasoning from. I look at the snow, I look at the impression, I look at the shape, I look at the pattern. All those things add up to say, well, therefore this must be that, right? All right, let's keep pushing. So the idea, so the Imam, why is that in fact? Oh, I can't go without adding. You just have, mashallah, look this up if you don't already know to understand it. The issue of sound and valid. There's a difference between a valid argument and a sound argument, right? Something can be valid if in fact it follows the proper structure for reasoning, right? Okay, you have to follow a certain structure for reasoning. And so I say, well, yeah, that's valid. But then the other side of it is, but it's not sound. Something can be valid, but unsound. It's valid because it fits the pattern. It's unsound because the content that has been put into that pattern, the information was not true. The information was not accurate. The information was not solid, even though you reasoned from it according to a particular structure. Okay. Okay. So it's humorous, but I'm gonna get away from it because we don't want to spend too much time here. Listen. So the difference between sound and valid is that you can have something in the right structure, but the content of the structure is itself not true, not sound, right? So the information was false, for example, right? So if the data points that you put into the structure are false, so that it can be valid in terms of its pattern, but it's invalid in terms of its substance, right? Let's leave it. Let's leave that alone. Let's move on. So the new material respects the reasoning. I'm quoting Imam Mohammed. So the new material respects the reasoning or respects the logic, right, that was established in the base. I've tried to make that clear. So every time you add something, this is what the Imam said. The Imam is saying your stuff has to be sound so that every time you put something on top, it don't break down. It's got to be able to support, understand. It has to be able to stand under what you're trying to establish, okay? So every time you add something to it, align to it, that material also respects the reasoning or the logic in the base, right? You got to always be, is it still true? Okay, what about this? Is it still true? Okay, what about this? Is it still true? So you're building up your structure because it is being continuously supported in your presentation of the information. So as long as it respects the reasoning or the logic in the base. So when it does that, when you finish, then the whole thing is rational. The whole thing is rational. I just always think about a pyramid. Whenever I read this quote from the Imam, I just think about a pyramid. You have a base, and then you add bricks till you come to the point. You come to the point, right? And it's all solid. When you finish the whole thing, it's rational. The whole thing can be understood by human mind. You have established a structure, logic upon logic, and within a framework of logic. If somebody is trying to give something and you got to go all the way to the east and then take a detour to southwest and then you got to go up to the north and then you got to come down obliquely to the east, and then now that's my point. So look, I'm not trying to mock. I'm we always, you got to put humor in it, because that's the flavor of things. Sometimes we get it, with a laugh. But the point is, if the less your point is from A to B, then the more likely it probably needs more work. It doesn't mean that's not a good idea, a good hypothesis, good possibility. It just means that you don't really have it figured out yet because you got to make too many turns to get to the destiny. It should be this point leads to that point leads to that. In fact, let's go ahead and use that. Imam Muhammad rahimahullah Rahimullah alayhi, alhamdulillah. And there's a very special program going on starting at 4 o'clock Pacific time, 7 o'clock Eastern time, the day of prayer for Imam Mohammed. So there's several hosts. I don't want to leave anybody out. Inshallah. So this is a time to acknowledge the Imam always, but this is a special day for sure. So Imam Muhammad, when he talked about Allah, he said, you see the hieroglyphics on the hieroglyphics, right? And in the hieroglyphics, you see one of those images with his leg up. One leg is up and the other leg is down, right? The Imam is saying that when you take steps, right? He says that in the Egyptian symbolism, one leg down is insight. One leg up is application. And that's how you make progress. You get the insight and you apply it. And when you apply it, you get more insight, and then you apply that. And you apply that, you get more insight than you apply. So that's walking, right? That walking is insight, application, insight, application, insight, application. Left, right, left, right, left, right, insight, left, application, right. All right. And support. What is rajul? Rajul is legs. Rajul is legs. And what is legs? Legs is logic. Right? Okay. And it's the legs that support the body, right? Your logic has to support your life and your progress. So all this is extended from moving past the cliche treatment of Imam Muhammad's statement, follow the logic to its conclusion. You need to understand. So you can see there's a lot to the idea of logic. It's not just a word to have fun with, okay? So you have to establish a structure, logic upon logic, and within a framework of logic. The central question, this book, reading from where we published 2009, the central question of this book is, what is the language of Imam Muhammad and who speaks it? My intention is to answer that question by defining and clarifying the difference between Imam Muhammad's language and Imam Muhammad's terminology. Imam Muhammad's language and Imam Muhammad's terminology, okay? Though, of course, we will be elaborating on the subject of Imam Muhammad's language, the simple answer to the main question is given in Imam Muhammad's statement above, namely that his language is listen to this, slow down. His language, at another time, this again, I published this 2009, 16 years ago. Right now, I would highlight, bold, underline this. So you know exactly what is being spoken of. Namely, his language, quote unquote, is any expression that respects the reasoning or the logic in the base of his teaching. If someone is not, if what someone is saying is not contradicting something that's in the base of whatever that subject matter, it doesn't matter. You can be talking about the Quran, you can be talking about the Sunnah, you can be talking about the Sirah, you can be talking about business, you can be talking about politics, you can say whatever. If you have the edified understanding of what Imam Muhammad was saying with regard to that thing, then if you do, then you understand the base of it all. It's like you heard a lecture in Philadelphia, you heard one in St. Louis, you heard one in Tennessee, you heard it, and Imam said education over here, and Imam said education over here, and he said education was this over there, and he said that was over there. Listen. There's always this possibility, Fahim Shoaib included, there's always this possibility that we could be the sixth blind man and the elephant when it comes to Imam Muhammad's teaching, okay? one got his hand on the side of the elephant, said the elephant is a wall. Not the blind man, right? The elephant is a wall. Another one got the leg, he said the elephant is a trunk. The other one got the tail, said the elephant is a rope. The other one got the trunk, it said the elephant is a snake. The other one got the tusk, he said the elephant is a spear. The other one got the ears, said the elephant is a fan, right? Every one of them, yeah, you all touching on the same thing. Yeah, the Imam did talk about education in Philadelphia. He did talk about education in Oakland. He did talk about education in Atlanta. He did talk, I'm saying literally at different locations, different times and situations, he spoke about that subject. Well, that's the elephant. That's the elephant. So it doesn't mean that what he said in Tennessee or what he said in Mississippi is the only thing ever to be understood about education. No, it's the elephant, right? So whoever speaks about it and understands the foundational knowledge that upon which whatever commentary Imam Muhammad gave, and you have, I have to use this word, synthesized, you have abstracted the fundamental, the foundational conception that Imam Muhammad has for whatever that subject is. Education, governance, but people like to talk about the four birds. There's more birds in the world than four, but it's an abstract. The Imam gives us these abstracts. All of those have to be elaborated on. But let's keep moving. So the idea is that as long as what is said does not contradict what is in the logic, in the base of that subject matter for the Imam, then they're speaking the language of Imam W. Oh, I never heard him say that. Well, that's because you only focus on the terminology. See, you focus on the terminology, but you're not focused on the language. All right? So that's bottom line. At this point, that is the point. Make the separation between language, Imam, when we use that word, language, and Imam Muhammad's terminology. So everybody who doesn't use Imam terminology for a particular thing at a given time doesn't mean, oh, he don't speak the language of Imam W. Muhammad. So enough of that. So we already know that that's foundational for what we're talking about right now. So continuing, how is a student, where am I at? How is a student of Imam Muhammad to know what is or is not the language of Imam Muhammad? First, they have to know the right question to ask. The wrong question to ask is, have I ever heard Imam Muhammad use particular phrases or particular words? I never heard Imam Muhammad use that word. The Imam, what was it? Oh, it just passed through my mind. Hold up, let me see. Let me see how quickly. Inshallah, y'all make dua for this. Inshallah, this is really. Man, I don't think I'm gonna be able to get it. There was a word that the Imam used early on in our mission. It's like, I thought I made a note of it. We're gonna try to find it. It would just be so nice and right for right now. But I don't think I'm going to find it. Couple more seconds and we see what comes up. One more search and then I'm gonna give it up. All right, got to give it up. So I'll bring it up another time. But it is a word that was Imam Muhammad said that. It was written and published. I don't know why I didn't set that apart. I'm on a different computer, so quite possibly moves on. So we got to move on. All right. So the point is that there are words that Imam Muhammad uh, uses or has used that you've never heard before, mashallah. Okay, so the correct question for a student of Imam Muhammad is to ask, does the material in question, whoever it is that's speaking, does the material in question, quote, respect the reasoning or the logic in the base? That is, as relates to the fundamental mission and objectives and worldview of Imam Muhammad's body of knowledge. And I would also add in this part of our conversation, his body of knowledge relative to the subject. So it's like in politics, so in economics, in academics, in anything, in science, in philosophy. The Imam said a lot about a lot of things, right? So you have to get the edifying understanding of whatever that subject matter is. It's very much like the seerah. Listen to what I'm saying. It's very much like the seerah, when the biography of the Prophet. And we talked about the mizaj shinasi rasul. The mizaj is the temperament, right? So the sirah and sirah, if I'm not mistaken, the sirah it has to do with shape, I believe also. So there's a certain profile, there's a certain shape to the let's call it worldview mindset of Imam Muhammad. Let's go back to the Prophet first. There's a mizaj, there's a temperament that the Prophet has. And where do you discover that? In his sirah, in his, just get a perception, a perspective, be informed about Prophet Muhammad's life from the beginning to the end, and that's the sirah. So then his life becomes the context in which and through which it becomes the context in which and through which you understand everything that transpired in his life, which includes the Quran, the hadith and sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So it's like, okay, you have the sirah, you have the profile, you have this temperamental understanding. I mean, you understand the personality of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when someone brings you a hadith, then that becomes a first filter for if there's an issue or a question or something that sort of is conflicting. So okay, well, how does it measure up to his overall demeanor, his overall temperament, his overall life structure, the uswa, right? His overall life structure. That's it. Okay, well, we have to do the same thing for Imam Muhammad rahimahullah on any subject in order to say that we have a very plausible, quite reasonable understanding of whatever position it is that we're taking on whatever it is. You're not serious if you're not allowing this broad kind of what might appear to some to be vague statement. The point is that we want to know what Imam Muhammad has said about anything that is significant for us, and we want to understand it correctly as it relates to seeing it in the way that he would have us see it right now in his literal absence. So what do? You have to do it on the foundation of the knowledge body that he left us, and understanding and treating that knowledge body as the filter for whatever it is that we might be contending about right now. It's like, okay, what are we talking about? If we talk about Imam Muhammad said this, and Imam Muhammad said, okay, if there's a conflict, okay, well, let's resolve the conflict by looking at it in the context of the Imam's mizaj, in the context of the Imam's temperament, in context of the Imam's profile, in the context of a fuller understanding of the totality of what he said about that. Not the last thing he said, not the first thing he said, not the middle thing he said. Let's get the whole body of knowledge on his, quote, politics, on his idea of economics, is on his idea of sociology, whatever, just doesn't matter. That should be enough. Let's keep going. So we use this idea of what is Islamic education to inshallah, achieve two things, right? One, understand what is and is not Islamic education, and also use the same frame, the same logic. Here's another thing about logic. Please, I hope you're making notes. The role of logic is to detect falsehood. Make a note of that. The role of logic is to detect falsehood. I think about the Beautiful Mind, that story. You know, some of you know, if you haven't noticed, it's a good movie. If you never seen the movie, it's a good movie to see. Real life about John Nash. So point is, his wife was leaving him because you just crazy. You out of it. You almost killed the baby and woo woo woo. So the woman she was just, look, I'm gone. I'm taking my baby. I'm getting up out of here. So she's in the car. She's getting away from the house. And then John Nash, he runs out and he stops in front of the car, as I remember it. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie. I'm pretty sure that's what he did. He stopped in front of the car. And so she had stopped. He said, the girl, she doesn't get older. She doesn't get older. Remember what we talked about, the footprints in the snow, the inference making, the reasoning, blah, blah. Brain guy, right? He's trying, what's going on? How can I know if this is real or if this is not real? It's like, am I deluded? Am I crazy? And so then when he realized that there are three that were following him around all the time, and he experienced them as absolutely positively real, right? Then after it had gone on for so many years, with the threat of losing his wife and child, etc., that put enough pressure on him to bring out a further deeper inquiry from himself. Say, it's got to be a way for me to prove this against that or whatever. He said, there's a girl in this trio that followed him around that he was deluded about, that was a part of his psychosis. She never got old. This was going on for years, but she never got any older. So he said, this has to be an illusion. This has to be delusional because she's not getting older, so she must not be real. And then also in the conclusion as well, when he got the great prize for his work, there was a person who was coming to tell him that he had won this prize, and he was in the classroom, still teaching in the classroom, a professor with all of his psychological maladies, and I would presume that there's some medication involved by this time. But in any case, he was, still well enough to be a professor in a college. So a person came to tell him about having won this very special award. And then so he brought one of the students over. And asked him, do you see this person? So he went, hey, look, I hear what you said, but I'm not going to trust myself in terms of doing that. So let me get somebody else, and I'm gonna point you out to them. And if they say you exist, because I know they don't suffer the same maladies. If they say you exist, okay, then you exist, and I'll accept you as real, right? That's also another critical way of understanding the difference between subjective and objective. The way to understand subjective and objective. Subjective is something that only you can experience, right? The taste of a banana, strawberry, blah, blah, whatever. That's subjective, right? Objective is a shared perception. Is there something that you can share it? Meaning that you experience perceptually what I experience. So that's a shared experience. And it's the objective that becomes a shared experience. So one of the ways of knowing if something is objective is that it is shared and it's not just subjective, right? So let's keep going. So the point is, in terms of understanding, to say something is or is not. This is Imam W. Muhammad's language. This is not Imam W. This is Islamic education. This is not Islamic education. So we use both because we need to understand both anyway. So here's a method. So what is Islamic education, right? Islamic education is a process which systematically addresses a specific set of educational questions, goals, and problems in accordance with al-Islam, right? Islamic education is a process which systematically addresses a specific set of educational questions, goals, and problems in accordance with al-Islam. Okay, I don't think we're going to finish this in this first hour, but we're going to carry on. It's an ongoing session that we're having. And Islamic education is not gained from just reading Islamic texts, the Quran, the Hadith, the tafsir of the ulama. May Allah's mercy be on all of them. Not from reading Islamic texts only. And Islamic education will also include materials adapted, not adopted, meaning that adapted means you make it fit your worldview, your aim, and again, presumptively that you have a valid worldview, right? Doesn't mean everything has to agree with you per se, but to agree with a valid worldview that serves as the base for whatever it is you're trying to put on top of it, right? According to the Imam's description, definition of edification. So the point is, an Islamic education also includes materials adapted, not adopted, from sources acceptable to Islam. Remember, the problem is contradiction to the logic in the base. Contradiction to the logic in the base. So if somebody gives you some material and they want to say that it is Islamic education, but it's contradicting the logic in the base of al-Islam's worldview, then no, it's not Islamic, right? And it's not acceptable to al-Islam because of its contradiction to the logic in the base, okay? This is precisely what brought about the Renaissance that the Muslims hail as one of their great contributions to human civilization. It was and is so because the Muslims at that time were heeding the words of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Knowledge is the lost property of the believer, and wherever they find it, they have more of a right to it. So the Muslim in the time of the Prophet, and which applies to all time, whenever and wherever there are Muslims, it's like all knowledge that is true is the inheritance of a believer. All knowledge. So when people give you the idea, oh, we don't want that. Like in the Nation of Islam, mashallah, and I appreciate and I value the Nation of Islam immensely. I would not be where I am, who I am, and what I am, quote unquote. I'm just following the alliteration, let's call it, without the Nation of Islam. So don't get it twisted. The idea is, we used to say, oh, that's the white man's knowledge. That's the devil's knowledge, right? No. If it's knowledge, it's the lost property of a believer. We have more of a right to it. Don't dismiss it. Which of the favors, the two favors of your Lord, will you deny twice? Imam Mohammed, rahimahullah. Okay, so even with that as a premise, it's like that should stop anybody from being averse to reading material that's not written by Muslims. All right. The key is the adjective suffix IC, right? Yes, there's some good implications just in that term. What is ik? What is ik? That suffix ik. Having one, these are different ways of the meaning for IC, the suffix IC. Having the characteristic or the form of, i.e. panoramic, of or relating to, derived from, or containing something, alcoholic, right? Means in the manner of or like that of, as in characteristic. It is associated or dealing with or utilizing something electronic, right? Or, and also characterized by, exhibiting, or affected with, that is allergic. The bold words are just examples of it. You can mechanic, you can do that, you know, whatever. Other words, I'm not going to try to name each one, but characteristics, allergic, that is caused by, something is caused by, as in seismic, something tending to produce something, as in analgesic. All right, so if that's the case, then what is Islam I see? What is Islamic, right? We're taking the first definition, it would mean having the characteristic or the form of al-Islam. So that means it's consisting of al-Islam. Number two, of or relating to al-Islam, derived from al-Islam or containing al-Islam. That's also Islamic. Also, in the manner of al-Islam, the like, or rather like that of al-Islam, characteristic of al-Islam. Also associated with dealing with al-Islam, like utilizing al-Islam. Also characterized by al-Islam, exhibiting al-Islam, affected with Islam, and also caused by al-Islam, and also tending to produce al-Islam. All of those, when you put ik on the end of Islamic, you know, then this is what you're saying. In order for something to fit into that category, it has to do something of and not be contradictory of these 7 ideas that are listed here. So the role of any school is to perpetuate the values of those who gave rise to it. That also is the definition of a school, right? Literally, I'm talking about educational institution. An educational institution, the role of the educational institution is to perpetuate the values of the people who gave rise to it. The Jesuit school is not there to produce Islamic scholars, right? The B'nai B'rith, is it Brith or Brit or whatever? B'nai, the Jewish universities, wherever they are. Brandeis, I think, one of them. It's not there to produce Christians. The Mormon, Brigham Young, it's not there to produce Jews. Every school is designed to perpetuate the values of those that gave rise to it. When you go to that school, the logic in the base of that school is we're trying to produce those that carry forward the values that we stand for, whether it be Jew, Christian, Mormon, Muslim, etc. Right? All right. So an Islamic school is to perpetuate the values of al-Islam. An Islamic school is to perpetuate the values of Islam. That's simple, direct, etc., etc. Either it does that or it doesn't. Either it does that or it doesn't. There's not a lot of other conversation to be had about it, right? So Islamic education actually means applying Islamic. Now you're talking about. So now we're all the way into areas like pedagogy, for example. Because that is also good. Like when you say zabiha, if you say zabiha, something is zabiha, then it has to do with the way the animal is raised, the way the animal is fed, the way the animal is slaughtered, etc. All of that is zabiha. Missing some of those things, as long as it's not pork, etc., then it can still be halal, but it will not necessarily be zabiha. All right? So likewise, when we're talking about Islamic education, so when we talk about Islamic education, methodology is also critical to that being deemed to be valid Islamic education. Islamic education actually means applying Islamic principles, processes, methods, and techniques successfully to the process of education. That is, education is a process. To do education in the way that al-Islam says do it is Islamic education, right? I don't know what else I can add. In terms of that, Islamic education, it means applying Islamic principles, processes, methods, and techniques successfully to the process of education, just like raising and slaughtering an animal in order for it to be dhabiha. In order for an Islamic education to be an Islamic education, then we have to incorporate all these things, the principles, the processes, the methods, the techniques in the act of educating, right? You know if someone has received an Islamic education because their education will produce, remember that the Islamic education is one that produces a certain type of a person, i.e. that's al-Islam, an Islamic person / Muslim, let's call it. Education, because their education will produce products that reflect Islamic values, the art, the literature, the technology, the techniques, the food, the music, the dress, the games, etc. Then those are byproducts of the Islamic education. So what is the distinction between Islamic culture and ethnic culture, right? Islamic culture and ethnic culture. Let me take a couple of minutes and get to this. We're going to go ahead and stop. We're not even going to start into this one right here. What is the language of Imam? But right now we're coming. Let's just finish up the Islamic education part, and then inshallah next week perhaps we'll get further. Excuse me. What is the distinction between Islamic culture and ethnic culture? It depends. Take, for example, art done by an Egyptian Muslim. The art is part of Egyptian ethnic culture by virtue of it having been done by an Egyptian artist. So an Egyptian artist did it, okay, it's Egyptian art. Why? Because an Egyptian did it. Egyptian art. The art can only be accepted as Islamic art, I would add, however, right? However, that art can only be accepted as Islamic art if the universal values of al-Islam are promoted by and are not offended by that artwork, right? So this has been floating through my head on a couple of occasions since we spoke, so let me say it now. So it's like when you talk about bid'ah in the context of innovation, you just translate it as innovation, blah, blah. Then, and then there's bid'ah as it relates to the deen, as it relates to the way of life, al-Islam. So there are those who might charge you have bid'ah, you have bid'ah relative to Imam Muhammad's language, Imam Muhammad's language. So it says that's bid'ah. You say it's bid'ah because you're locking into thinking that only the explicit terminology spoken out of the mouth is the language of Imam Muhammad. And it's that kind of misunderstanding in the 13th century that took the Muslims off the high pedestal of leading the world in industry and in other areas. So in terms of art, for example, whatever, just because a person who is a Muslim, regardless of ethnicity, just because they did it and it's an art form, it doesn't automatically become Muslim art because it was a Muslim that did it. No. In the same way that Egyptian art, Egyptian art, because of that, you have to bring another layer of evaluation in order to say if it is or is not. You have those Egyptians that say, well, no, Egyptians don't do that. Egyptians don't think like that. Blah. That art right there, that's not even Egyptian art. Okay, I'm trying not to get too entangled in it. But the point is to understand that just because one who takes the label is the one who did it, no disrespect, but it's just real. Listen, Dave Chappelle's comedy, that's not Muslim comedy. You can say it's a Muslim doing the kind, but that's not Muslim comedy, right? Bottom line. It's like no disrespect or whatever, but the point is, if it's not, then don't even think about it as that. He's a person who's a Muslim, and he himself admits, he said, yeah, I say I'm a Muslim, but I didn't say I do it well, right? Okay. Let's get out of this little entanglement right here. So the art can only be accepted as Islamic art if the universal values of al-Islam are promoted by and are not offended by the art. If the artwork doesn't offend al-Islam, mashallah, it can be accepted as Islamic art. All right. If the universal values of al-Islam are promoted and not offended by the artwork, then that artwork is also a legitimate part of Islamic culture, right? The principle holds true, not just for Egyptians, but also for every other ethnic group, Africans, Asians, Europeans, etc. And not just for art, but also for all dimensions of culture, art, literature, technology, etc. All right. So the point is that there's refined perception that has to be applied before you say this is or this is not. You have to be able to make those distinctions. So inshallah, next week we'll go further with this and get more particularly to what is the language of Imam W.D. Muhammad, because up to this point we're talking about the need to make a distinction between Imam Muhammad's language and Imam Muhammad's terminology. When we make that distinction, inshallah, we'll understand. You can see how much broader your world gets because you're not just restricting yourself to, well, I heard the Imam say this, but I never heard him say that. So maybe I should never say that because I never heard Imam Muhammad say that. Big mistake, big mistake. So inshallah, next week we'll carry on with that. Thank you for being here and present. So I'm going to stop my share and invite you in for any comments, questions that you have. Now, again, those comments and questions can relate to the Fajr Halaqa and also anything that we say on this Tuesday broadcast. So we're going to spend a few minutes together. Those of you on Facebook Live, what do you have to do? I think I put a link in the chat, whatever it is, whatever you call it on Facebook, and you can click over and join the conversation if you like. But otherwise, you'll be hearing my side of it. If anybody decides to say anything.
Oh, I have something to say.
All right, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Well, thank you again for all of the knowledge that you're sharing with us, and it's going to take up till next week to cipher it all through it. But one thing that jumped in my mind, and based on what you were saying about the culture and the ethnic culture and Islamic culture, or even the base of what we've been taught by either W.D. Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with his soul. When we are confronted, say, in a committee, and one of the members of the committee in our organization, we clear that up too, and they bring something to the table that has a big question mark behind it, does that necessarily have to be looked at as being perhaps Islamic, but not ethnic culture? Say, for instance, example, wudu.
Yeah.
Some people acknowledge or understand that the steps to wudu and the times you're supposed to do it to each part of your body may differentiate from 3 to 1, etc. Would that fall under the ethnic culture of Islam?
No, not really. I mean, it could, in the sense that if maybe people, whatever, I'm gonna throw some out, Somali Muslim. Okay, so someone who's Somali Muslim, because everybody who is a Muslim is some ethnic type of Muslim, whether people admit it or not, right?
Right.
And one of the ideas, I have a beautiful quote that I often use for this aspect when you talk about culture. Without elaborating, I'll say this: we're all protected by something that we cannot see, that came from something that we do not understand. And essentially, that's our culture, right? Our culture is a womb of protection for us. And when we were growing up in a particular culture, we absorbed it informally. But indeed, actually, God says everyone acts according to the way that they've been socialized, right? 1784 in the Quran. So if you've lived in a statistically Muslim country all your life, and that's the way that you saw people making wudu, and maybe from some school of thought, if there was a decision that this is the way we do wudu, and it's not violating ways that were perhaps done by the Prophet, and that's the way that they are. Sometimes when they leave that culture and come over there, they don't know. The only thing they know about what is Muslim is what they were raised in. So you doing something different than what they were raised in, they're innocently, they would say, well, no, you're not doing it right. No, I'm not doing it the way you
do it. Right.
in your culture. You ain't wrong, but I ain't necessarily wrong also because I haven't looked at what the person was doing. I ain't necessarily wrong either because I wasn't acculturated the way you were acculturated, even as a Muslim, right?
Mhm.
Does that get to what you're saying?
Yeah, it does.
All right.
Because in this committee, alhamdulillah, that I am now chairing
Mhm.
that for new Shahada sisters or sisters in general orientation class.
Yeah.
We have sisters there that are seasoned sisters as well as the new sisters that are coming in. And in some of our discussions, they've come up with a difference of opinion on certain topics that I'm presenting to the class. And that was one of them in reference to the wudu, how many times you do it, 3 times or 1 time or whatever, things of that nature. So I was just wondering about that.
All right. So I'm not, you got to live where you live and you got to do what you do. I understand exactly what you're saying. This is why
Right.
when we do our Shahadatain class, if you've been a Muslim for more than 2 years, you can't come. That's what we do. I'm not trying to start no wars where you are.
You
But
can't come to the new Shahada class?
no, why you need new Shahada? And you've been around for, it's a class for them. And unless they're teachers, literally, and with that as a function, then but see that's
Yeah,
local.
he's like you say, the different areas or whatever. Well, in our case, some of these sisters that are in this class and I'm chairing, not most of them, some of them have not even taken their Shahada yet. So
Well,
I just
that's good.
arbitrarily changed the name to just an orientation class for sisters, whether you've taken your Shahada or not.
Okay, well, since it's a different class, so I'm gonna step back.
But I'm like, but originally I can understand where you're coming from when you're
Yeah,
saying Shahadatain class. And at that time, some sisters that are in there came from the onset of it being called new Shahadatain class. They had taken their Shahada more than 2 years ago. But they were feeling like they never got what they were looking for in a class, or never was in a class.
It's probably the case, no doubt. No, it's
they welcome this class now, and so that's why I changed the title to orientation, because some of the women in there have not yet taken their Shahada, but they're seeking, they're studying, they're learning, they want to see what it is that they feel like that they're getting ready to step into.
All right, thank you. Alhamdulillah. Anybody else?
Assalamu alaikum.
Hey, one time, ma'am. How you doing?
Praise be to Allah. I'm good. I just wanted to ask you whether or not you've heard the language where the Imam said, "Follow the logic to its logical conclusion."
You didn't start with us today, right? You came in late, right?
Yeah, I guess I did.
No, I know you did. that was 60% of the subject today. That's where we started. That's where we started.
Right.
So inshallah, we're gonna get it posted up. But do you have a specific question around that or a statement around that? Whatever.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I just wanted to know if that statement was given in its completeness, I guess you could say.
No, and that's what I started off pointing out. That
okay. Praise be to Allah.
People often don't quote it in the right context or with the right emphasis. Yeah, that's how it started. So I would say almost half it. So inshallah, you motivated me to get it up faster, so then you'll be able to go to masjidorthin.org and get it, just pull it down and you can review the whole thing. One thing that I will say that we did say, which is central to it, because we spent a lot of time talking about soundness, validity, what makes a good argument, what the conclusions and all. We spent a lot of time talking about logic itself, what it actually was. But the biggest I think issue that I wanted to start out with, it was the idea that the Imam stated in the context of courage. Yeah, he wasn't talking about it in the context of intellect per se. he's saying, you know, you have to follow logic to it. You have to have the courage to follow, or some of you fear following the logic to its conclusion. And again, that has to do with, you know, sometimes if this is this and that's that, sometimes people don't want to some people don't want to say or follow up. Okay, well, if this is the case, then the logic says that the conclusion is this. No, I don't want to say that. I don't want to do that. Well, then you're afraid to follow the logic to its conclusion.
Yeah, I got the part on logic to its conclusion. I got several notes on that. It's just that I guess I just um, zeroed in on follow the logic to its logical conclusion.
Well,
I think that's where my
okay, but that's not the way that I recorded or have that. So both of
that's
us,
all I was saying.
yeah, we would have to compare what your
Just
source is, because in the source that I'm drawing from, he said some of you are afraid to follow the logic to its conclusion.
yes, yes.
It doesn't
No,
add.
it was just a small point, I think.
Okay.
Because when I listened to you, I got the same gist of what you were saying now.
Okay, good. Okay. All right.
Yes. Also, just let me ask you about someone who separated himself from our community
Mhm.
because he thought that reciting El Fatiha after the prayer, after we had tasleemed out of the prayer, he called that biddah.
Yeah,
You know, so he was a young-minded person. So I just like, well, he didn't say it to me directly, but I heard that was shared with me.
Yeah, I get that. Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your statement.
No. It was around the idea of you were talking about in biddah, you know.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. There's actually when I had to let's just call it address that question. I'm gonna see if I can do a quick search, if I can pull it up. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's gonna happen. But I have reports from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that um, do not forbid saying dua. Let's see. Might have something. No, this was okay. So inshallah, you call me. I have your email if I find it. Sorry, everybody online right away. That if I find it, that's it. But the point is that to deal with the issue of bid'ah is innovation, and that bid'ah, that innovation, there's what you call bid'ah qati, meaning that it's straight up bona fide bid'ah, right? And so some people make the mistake in their reasoning that if the prophet didn't do it, then you shouldn't do it, right? There's sense that's to be made in that, but now we're into the idea of thinking and reasoning, because the form is that if the prophet didn't do it, then you should do it. Okay, the prophet didn't fly on an airplane, the prophet didn't ride in a boat, the prophet didn't ride a bicycle, whatever. There's so many things that the prophet didn't do. So how is everything that the prophet didn't do going to be bid'ah? How do you live in a world where the prophet never did so many of the things that we do? So that's not the rationale. That's not a supportive. But even though there are people who follow that, as you're pointing out, and that's the part of the problem. The part of the problem is that you're taking things literally, but they were taught that way. They didn't come into that on their own.
There's no logic.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the spider pulled them up and put them in the web.
Because the prophet didn't make dua for himself. He heard someone making dua, and then he shared with them how to make the dua when he gave us the prayer of Ibrahim. and it got incorporated into the salat.
Okay.
So the prophet didn't do that.
Okay.
So the prophet didn't tell them when he saw them doing that, that it was bid'ah.
Yeah.
He didn't tell them that.
Yeah.
He showed them the correct way to I was gonna say respond, to present that to the prayer, the prayer salat. He showed them how they should present that, and it had been incorporated into the prayer and used ever since.
Alhamdulillah.
You know, Allahumma salli wa Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. You know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like Ibrahimiyya. Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
Okay. That's all I wanted to.
All right. Well, we appreciate it always, Imam. Others? You know, this computer, I think about these kinds of questions because these are questions or issues, let's say, that's I just call it, that's my stock and trade. That's what I do. When those kinds of questions come up, it's like I immediately go to work to file them, and I have another computer. And so my older computer, that the older the question is, more likely it's on another computer. So inshallah, I'm gonna pull that one out, and inshallah, if it comes up again, or if you want to bring it up again, because I want everyone to have the hadith that support the, how can you say, the non-violational character of making dua after the salah. All right. So let's do that. We'll get to that. So is there not anything anyone want to add before we close out? Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. And inshallah, those of you will be with us in the morning for Fajr Halaqa. We look forward to that. May Allah guide us to the best, forgive us our shortcomings. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.